The air was heavy with incense and moonfire. Pale smoke coiled toward the heavens as if pleading for mercy from the goddess who watched through the swollen full moon. Naya stood barefoot before the sacred altar, her hands trembling despite her resolve. Every stone of the moon temple shimmered with ethereal light, ancient runes pulsing faintly beneath her feet, alive, breathing, judging. The elders circled her, their robes trailing like ghosts on the marble floor. Above them, the sacred sigil of the moon goddess glowed in liquid silver, a symbol of submission, of destiny, of chains. And tonight, those chains were meant for her. The crowd gathered outside the temple, hundreds of wolves in their human forms, kneeling, heads bowed low in reverence. Every breath hung suspended in the cool night air. The drums slowed to a pulse that matched the rhythm of her heart. The high priest raised his staff. "In the name of the moon goddess, we seal the union of the Alpha King and his chosen Omega," he intoned. The words struck Naya like iron. Her throat ached with the scream she would not release. Chosen Omega. The words felt like a curse. She hadn't chosen this fate, Ronan had. The Alpha King of the Silver Blood Pack, ruthless, cold, and bound by laws older than the forest itself. He had marked countless enemies, conquered countless lands. Now, it was her turn to be conquered. Naya's eyes lifted to meet his. Ronan stood across the altar, his broad shoulders cloaked in black and silver, his amber eyes glowing like molten suns beneath his crown of bone and moonstone. Every inch of him radiated dominance, the kind that suffocated everything around it. When he looked at her, it wasn't affection. It was possession. A silent war ignited between them. The high priest pressed a silver dagger to her wrist. "Do you accept the bond, Naya of the Crescent clan?" She hesitated. All eyes turned toward her, the air trembling, the tension so thick she could almost taste it. Her heart thundered, but her voice came out steady. "I don't." Gasps tore through the temple. Even the torches flickered as if shocked by her defiance. The high priest faltered, his eyes wide with disbelief. But it was too late. The words had been spoken. Ronan stepped forward, the sound of his boots echoing like thunder across the marble floor. "You will accept it," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "Or I will make you wish you had." Before she could reply, the dagger's blade glowed with divine light, and the ceremony continued despite her rebellion. The mark, a spiraling silver flame, seared into her skin. The pain was blinding, divine, eternal. The scent of her burning flesh filled the air. Naya bit back a scream, her nails digging into her palms. But when the mark began to form fully, she did something no Omega had ever dared. She clawed at it. Her fingers tore at her own flesh, blood streaking down her wrist as she tried to rip the goddess's blessing away. The mark pulsed, fighting her, glowing brighter, searing deeper. Her breath came in ragged sobs, but she didn't stop. The crowd screamed in horror. Some dropped to their knees, whispering desperate prayers. Others fled. The sky darkened, clouds devouring the moonlight as if the heavens themselves recoiled. Ronan's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron, unyielding. "Enough," he roared. But she looked up, eyes blazing with tears and fury. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "I will not be owned." The last word left her lips like a curse. The ground trembled. The sacred flame guttered out. The silver sigil above the altar cracked down the center, splitting in two. A divine rebellion, born from her defiance. Naya's body trembled, her knees giving way as she collapsed against the cold marble. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, the drums began, deep, thunderous, echoing through the valley. War drums. Ronan turned, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, those eyes burned with something raw. Not just rage. Not just pride. Something darker. "Take her to the dungeons," he ordered. "If she wants to defy the goddess, let her face the storm she summoned. They dragged her away, her bare feet leaving streaks of blood on the temple floor. Behind her, the crowd broke into chaos, cries of blasphemy, fear, and awe merging into a storm of noise that filled the night. Hours passed. The moon waned behind clouds, and silence fell over the forest. The once holy grounds now reeked of smoke and fear. Naya sat in the shadows of her cell, the silver mark still glowing faintly on her wrist, a cruel reminder of her rebellion. The scent of her own blood mixed with damp stone. Her body ached, but her spirit refused to bend. Outside, thunder rumbled. The world was changing. Because of her. From the distance came the howl of wolves, hundreds of them. The packs were choosing sides. And soon, blood would stain the rivers. She lifted her head at the sound of approaching footsteps. They were heavy, deliberate. She knew that sound too well, Ronan. The door creaked open. The Alpha King stepped in, his presence filling the space like a shadow made flesh. His shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, his chest marked with faint silver runes that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. He looked like sin carved from the moon itself. He didn't speak. He simply studied her, the defiant Omega who had brought ruin upon his sacred ceremony. Finally, he crouched before her, tilting her chin upward. "You think the goddess will save you for this?" he asked quietly. Naya met his gaze. "I don't need saving." For a moment, something flickered across his expression, admiration, or maybe regret. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold command. "You've doomed your clan," he said. "Your defiance has already set the packs against each other. Blood will fall because of you." "Then let it," she whispered. "Better blood than chains." Ronan's jaw tightened. He stood, pacing slowly, the storm outside echoing his fury. "You think rebellion makes you free?" he said. "It makes you a target." "Then aim well," she replied, voice soft but unyielding. For the first time, Ronan laughed, low, humorless, dangerous. The sound rolled through the cell like thunder. He stepped closer, the space between them charged with tension. His hand brushed her wrist, tracing the half-burned mark. The touch sent a shiver through her, not from fear, but something far more treacherous. "Even in your rebellion," he murmured, "you carry my mark. You can claw until you bleed, but it's already inside you." She yanked her hand back, eyes blazing. "I'd rather die than belong to you." Ronan's expression darkened. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "Careful what you wish for, little Omega." He turned to leave, his cloak sweeping behind him like a shadow. But just before he reached the door, he stopped. His voice came, low and sharp, the promise of fire. "When the next moon rises, the war begins." The door slammed shut. Naya exhaled shakily, her hands trembling. Outside, lightning split the sky, and for a moment, she thought she heard the goddess's voice whispering through the thunder. "Defy me, and you defy fate itself." That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she sat against the cold stone wall, tracing the faint scar where the mark burned brightest. She could still feel Ronan's gaze, the way it pierced through her even when he was gone. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her ached. Not for forgiveness, but for understanding. Was it possible that beneath his cruelty, something human still lived? Or was he simply another beast carved in divine image? Her heart warred with her mind, and both lost to the silence. By dawn, the forest burned. Smoke rose beyond the walls, villages set aflame, wolves howling in the distance, chaos born of one woman's refusal to bow. The guards ran through the corridors, shouting orders, their armor glinting in the blood-red sunrise. And in the chaos, Naya saw her chance. She pressed her hands against the silver bars. Her mark pulsed, glowing faintly. For the first time, it didn't burn, it responded. The air around her shifted, bending to her will. The mark flared, and with a whispered prayer, or maybe a curse, the lock shattered. Freedom. She slipped into the smoke and shadow, heart pounding. The forest awaited, wild, dark, alive. But so did he. Branches whipped against her skin as she ran. The scent of burning wood filled her lungs. Behind her, she heard him, his steps steady, relentless. No matter how fast she ran, the forest whispered his name like a curse. Ronan. She stumbled into a clearing, moonlight spilling through the canopy. The wind stilled. And then, he was there. Emerging from the shadows like a beast reborn, amber eyes gleaming. Run all you want, he said quietly, stepping closer. You can't outrun destiny. Naya turned, fire in her eyes. Then I'll rewrite it. He smiled, a slow, dangerous smile that didn't reach his eyes. Say it again. What? He took another step. Say it again, little Omega. Reject me. Her lips parted. I reject you. The words echoed through the clearing, raw and trembling. Ronan's gaze darkened, his voice dropping to a growl. Then I'll make the world burn for it. The night exploded into thunder. And the war of packs began. As Ronan corners her in the forest, his voice breaks the silence. Say it again, little Omega. Reject me, and I'll make the world burn for it. The rain had not stopped since the night she defied him. Ronan stood beneath the wavering light of his war tent, drenched in the scent of smoke, steel, and blood. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, the sound of the moon goddess herself mourning what had been broken. Inside, silence clung to the air like the aftermath of prayer. He should have been proud. He was the Alpha, chosen by the divine to lead his people, branded by the goddess as her weapon. Yet tonight, the mark on his chest, the same that once bound him to Naya, burned with a ghostly ache. He pressed his palm to it, and for the first time since he'd earned his title, his knees weakened. The rejection replayed in his mind like a curse carved in bone. Her eyes, wild with rebellion. Her trembling lips as she whispered those words that shattered destiny itself, I reject you. Every memory of that moment cut deeper than any blade. Alpha. The flap of the tent shifted, and his beta, Kale, stepped in. His armor was soaked, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, but his expression held that familiar, unyielding devotion. The Eastern scouts await your command, Kale said quietly. They've found traces of the rogues along the Frost River. No sign of her yet. Ronan's jaw clenched. The muscles in his arms flexed as he reached for his sword, its blade gleaming under the torchlight. Then they keep searching, he said, voice sharp enough to cut through the storm. The traitors will burn. Every last one who harbored her will pay for defying my mark. Kale hesitated, his gaze flickering for a fraction of a second. And if you find her, Alpha? Ronan's hand froze on the hilt. The question lingered like smoke. When he finally looked up, his eyes glowed the way only an Alpha's could, molten amber, lit by fury and grief. Then, he said, voice low, she'll learn what it means to reject a god's chosen. The war horn sounded at dawn. Across the valley, banners bearing Ronan's sigil, the silver wolf entwined with flame, unfurled in the wind. Soldiers poured into ranks, armored and relentless, their chants echoing like thunder. Ronan of the Flame! Ronan of the Flame! They worshipped him not as a man, but as something more, something divine. And he let them. Because if he let himself be human even for a moment, he might remember that he once loved the woman he was now sworn to destroy. Inside the tent, he stood before the altar, a stone slab carved with ancient runes of the moon goddess. The scent of burning sage filled the air as he dropped to one knee, pressing his sword to the earth. Moon Mother, he whispered. You gave me a mate to balance my strength, and she turned her back on you. Lightning flashed beyond the tent walls, painting his face in silver light. From this day forward, he swore, I fight not as your vessel, but as your vengeance. I will bring her to her knees, or I will die trying." The torches roared to life around him as if the goddess herself had heard. His generals entered one by one, bowing their heads as he rose, the fire reflecting in his eyes. "Prepare the legions," he commanded. "We march at nightfall." And as the soldiers' roar shook the mountains, Ronan's heart beat with a vow born not of duty, but of heartbreak. Far beyond the war camps, deep within the forests of the north, Naya moved like a shadow. Her breath came in shallow bursts, every step sending pain flaring through her side where Ronan's mark had once burned. The wound had never healed. It glowed faintly beneath her skin, a cruel reminder of the bond she'd torn apart. Around her, the rogues whispered in awe and fear. Some called her cursed. Others called her brave. But none dared to speak her name too loudly. For Naya was the Omega who had defied the moon. The one who rejected an Alpha's mark. The one whose rebellion had started a war. In the dim light of the cave, she sat against the stone wall, clutching her cloak tighter. Her fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything she had lost. Her pack. Her family. Her place in the world. But not her freedom. That, she had claimed with blood. Beside her, a young rogue named Eli tended to the small fire. He glanced at her, worry clouding his eyes. "You shouldn't move yet," he said softly. "You're wound." "I'm fine," Naya murmured, though her voice was brittle. "Pain means I'm still alive." Eli frowned. "They say the Alpha's army is moving north. He won't stop until he finds you." Naya met his gaze, a faint, bitter smile ghosting across her lips. "Then he'll have to find a ghost." The wind howled outside the cave, carrying with it the faint echo of drums, Ronan's drums, rolling across the valley like a heartbeat of war. Her heart twisted, remembering the warmth of his hand, the sound of his voice when it wasn't laced with command. Once, she had believed in him. Believed in their fate. But love built on chains was never love at all. She rose slowly, wincing as pain lanced through her ribs, and looked out into the darkness beyond the cave. The moon hung low, a pale, watchful eye. "Let him come," she whispered. "I will never bow again." Far away, the storm broke. Ronan stood at the head of his army as rain lashed against his armor. The smell of steel and lightning filled the air, sharp and intoxicating. His generals stood behind him, awaiting orders, but he was somewhere else, lost in the echo of her voice. He remembered the softness in her eyes before it all turned to fire. The way she had looked at him not as a god, but as a man. That memory burned brighter than the storm. And that was why he had to destroy her. Because a man in love could be broken. But a weapon could not. He raised his sword toward the horizon. "To the traitor who defied me," he roared. "We march." The army surged forward, thousands of feet pounding in rhythm, thunder answering their call. And in the depths of the forest, far from his reach, Naya opened her eyes as if she had hurt him. For a moment, the mark on her skin flared to life, silver fire beneath her flesh. She gasped, clutching it, the pain searing through her veins like molten light. Somewhere, through the veil of distance and storm, she felt him. Felt his fury. His longing. His vow. And though she feared him, a part of her, the part that still remembered his touch, whispered back across the night. "Then come, Alpha. Find me." Hours later, in the blackest hour before dawn, Kale entered Ronan's tent again, dripping from the rain. His face was pale, his voice shaking with restrained urgency. "Alpha," he said. "We found her." Ronan's head snapped up. Kale's next words were almost drowned out by the storm, but they struck like lightning. "She's been found, Alpha. The traitor lives." Ronan's fingers tightened around his sword, his mark pulsing with life. The storm outside grew wild, lightning splitting the sky. His lips curved, not in triumph, but in something darker. Then the hunt begins. The storm had not yet died when the first flames rose over the valley. Snow fell softly at first, pale and innocent, until the fire swallowed it whole. Ronan's army moved through the darkness like a tide of shadow and steel. Every step echoed with the promise of vengeance. Banners whipped in the howling wind, their sigils, the silver wolf entwined with flame, glowing in the torchlight. At the front rode Ronan himself, armor blackened by ash, eyes like burning embers beneath the storm. His sword was already unsheathed, its blade hungry for retribution. The rogues hide in the eastern ridge, Kale reported, galloping beside him. Scouts say they built shelters near the frozen stream. Ronan's jaw tightened. His voice was calm, but the fury beneath it trembled like a bowstring drawn too tight. Then we cleanse the ridge. A single signal from his hand, and the horns of war blared. The night exploded. Arrows streaked through the air. Fire rained upon the forest, devouring trees and tents alike. The ground shook as wolves in full shift tore into enemy lines, snarls mixing with screams. It was chaos, pure, divine chaos. And at the heart of it, the Alpha rode like death incarnate. Deep within the rogue encampment, Naya heard the first screams before she smelled the smoke. Her pulse quickened. She had been expecting this, but not tonight. "Get the children to the caverns," she shouted, grabbing a wounded man by the arm. "Move." The rogues scrambled, panic tearing through them. The smell of burning wood mixed with fur and blood as tents collapsed under the weight of flame. Eli appeared at her side, his face pale and streaked with soot. "They're everywhere," he said breathlessly. "The Alpha's wolves, they're slaughtering everyone." Naya's eyes darted toward the treeline. The glow of torches was getting closer, the sounds of growls and metal clashing echoing like a heartbeat. She should have run. Should have vanished into the night like the coward they called her. But then she heard it, a child's cry. A small boy, no older than 7, trapped beneath the splintered beam of a burning tent. Naya didn't hesitate. She sprinted through the flames, ignoring Eli's shout behind her. Heat seared her skin, smoke filled her lungs, but she didn't stop until she reached him. "Hold still," she coughed, grabbing the beam. Her palms burned as she pushed, muscles trembling. The child whimpered, clutching at her cloak. "Please," he cried. "It hurts." She gritted her teeth, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. "You're not dying here, little one." With a final scream, she shoved the beam aside and scooped the boy into her arms. His body was trembling, but his eyes, wide and full of fear, met hers with desperate trust. "Run to the river," she whispered, setting him down. "Follow the moonlight. Don't look back." He nodded and bolted into the smoke. For a brief, fleeting moment, Naya felt something pierce through the terror, something pure. Hope. But then, the sound came. A growl. Low, deep, and all too familiar. She turned. And there he was. Ronan. The firelight danced across his armor, reflecting in his eyes, molten, merciless, beautiful. His soldiers stood behind him, a wall of steel and shadow. She froze, heart pounding, her body trembling from exhaustion and fury alike. "Run," she whispered to herself. "Run." But her legs wouldn't move. He stepped closer, each stride deliberate, predatory. "You should have kept running when you had the chance, little Omega." Her throat tightened. "And live as what? A ghost? A slave?" Ronan's eyes narrowed, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "Better a ghost than ashes." He moved too fast to see. One moment, he was yards away, the next, his hand was on her arm, dragging her close. The contact burned, the mark on her skin pulsing like a living flame. The air between them crackled. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire around them hissed and roared, casting their faces in shades of gold and crimson. Then she spat the words like venom. If you came to kill me, do it. But you won't chain me again. Ronan's grip tightened, his voice breaking through the crackle of flame. No, Naya. You'll chain yourself, when you remember what you are. Her eyes flashed, tears mingling with ash. Then you'll die waiting. The firestorm consumed the night. Bodies littered the snow, steam rising where blood met frost. The air reeked of iron and despair. Naya fought like a cornered wolf. Her claws tore through armor, her body moving with the feral grace of survival. Each strike was a memory, each wound, a reminder of what love had cost her. She had been soft once. Trusting. Marked. Now she was fury. But even fury had limits. Ronan's soldiers closed in, one by one, until there was nowhere left to run. She stumbled, knees hitting the snow, breath ragged. Her hands shook from exhaustion. A sword pressed to her throat. Ronan's voice, low and steady, filled the silence. Enough. The soldiers froze, stepping back as their alpha approached. The firelight danced across his face, a face carved from shadow and sorrow. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. You saved a child, he said quietly. Even in rebellion, you protect. She lifted her head, defiant even as blood ran down her lip. That's the difference between us, Ronan. You burn what you claim to love. For the first time, something flickered in his gaze, pain, raw and unguarded. Love, he echoed bitterly. You call this love, Naya? You rejected the bond. You turned my heart into a weapon. She smiled, hollow and trembling. No. You chose to make it one. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He reached down, seizing her by the wrist. Chains clinked in his other hand, silver, heavy, forged in divine fire. He bound her wrists before she could resist, the metal hissing as it touched her skin. The mark on her body glowed in response, silver meeting silver, the bond thrumming between them like a heartbeat refusing to die. Release me, she whispered. He looked at her, not as an alpha, not as a god's weapon, but as a man torn apart. If I do, he said softly, I'll never be able to find you again. Then he turned away, dragging her with him toward the waiting horses. His soldiers averted their eyes. None dared question the alpha who now led the traitor through the snow, her chains glinting like fallen stars. Behind them, the rogue camp burned to ash. The child she'd saved had vanished into the forest, the last ember of hope she'd left behind. They rode in silence through the frozen wasteland. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, as if the goddess herself was bearing witness to the tragedy below. Naya's wrists throbbed beneath the chains. The metal was cold, yet the bond burned hot within her veins. She could feel his heartbeat, slow, powerful, agonizingly close. At last, she spoke. What am I to you now? She asked. A trophy? A lesson for your wolves? Ronan didn't answer. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the horizon. You think chaining me will make me submit, she pressed, her voice trembling but sharp. You think pain will make me yours again? He stopped the horse abruptly. Turning to her, he leaned in, so close she could see the reflection of her fire-lit eyes in his. I don't want your submission, he murmured. I want the truth. Naya stared at him, breath shallow. The truth? He nodded. Tell me why, Naya. Why did you reject me that night? For a long moment, only the wind spoke. Snow fell gently around them, a cruel contrast to the fire still burning in the distance. Then she whispered, because I loved you. And love should never feel like a cage. Ronan's breath hitched, the briefest break in his armor. His hand hovered near her face, trembling, before he forced it away. He couldn't touch her. Not without losing everything. Then I'll make you forget that cage, he said, voice low and haunted. Even if it means breaking every part of you that still resists. Naya lifted her chin, eyes blazing with defiance. If you want obedience, Alpha, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her lips. Break me. The wind howled. The chains between them glowed faintly in the moonlight. And somewhere, deep within both their hearts, the bond stirred again, wounded, but alive. Neither noticed the shadow watching from the trees, a pair of golden eyes gleaming with divine wrath. The fortress stood like a wound carved into the mountains, vast, cold, eternal. Its walls, forged from black stone and old blood, had witnessed centuries of conquest. Now, they held something the world had never seen before, a caged flame that refused to die. Naya sat in the center of her cell, her wrists bound by silver chains that pulsed faintly with moonlight. Each link was etched with runes, marks of suppression designed to silence her power, to crush her will. Yet, her gaze burned brighter than ever. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, carrying whispers of the battlefield she had left behind. Somewhere out there, the snow was still red. Somewhere out there, the goddess watched and waited. And above her, in the highest chamber of the fortress, Ronan stood at the window, watching the night devour his kingdom. It had been 3 days since the raid. 3 days since he had chained her to the world he ruled. He told himself it was justice. Retribution. A way to end the madness she had unleashed. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, not the traitor, not the rebel, but the woman who had once whispered his name like a prayer. Kale entered quietly, the scent of ash and snow following him. The rogues are retreating beyond the northern ridge, he reported. The rebellion weakens. But, he hesitated. The men are uneasy. They question why she still lives. Ronan turned, his amber eyes sharp. Do they forget who commands them? Kale bowed. They remember. But they fear her, Alpha. They call her the defiant Omega, the one who cursed the moon's mark. Ronan's jaw tightened. The title stung, not because it was false, but because it was true. Let them fear, he said. Fear keeps loyalty alive. Kale nodded, but his gaze lingered. And you, my king? What keeps you? Ronan didn't answer. He looked back toward the dungeons, where the faint flicker of torchlight glowed behind iron bars. She does, he whispered. Down below, Naya stirred. The cold bit at her skin, but her thoughts burned hotter than the flames that once consumed the rogue camp. Her body ached, her lips were cracked, but her spirit still stood tall. Every night, she dreamed of freedom. Every morning, she woke to the sound of chains. When the door opened, she didn't look up. She didn't need to. His scent filled the air before his voice did, the heady mix of iron, smoke, and the faint wild musk of wolf. Eat, Ronan said, setting down a tray of food she hadn't asked for. She laughed bitterly, eyes still fixed on the floor. Planning to fatten your prisoner before the execution? His boots echoed against the stone as he moved closer. You think I would kill you? You already did, she said, lifting her head. Just slower than most. For a long moment, their eyes locked, predator and prey, though it was no longer clear which was which. Her chains glinted between them, thin yet unbreakable. You defied me before the goddess, Ronan said quietly. You defied fate. Do you even understand what that means? Yes, she replied. It means I belong to no one. Not even her. Something shifted in his gaze, pain, anger, longing. A storm too old to name. You call that freedom? He asked. You've seen what it brings, death, ruin, blood in the snow. She smiled faintly. Then I'll paint the world red if I have to. His breath hitched, barely audible. He stepped closer until the light from the torches cut across his face, every scar, every line of exhaustion made visible. "You still wear my mark," he said. "You may fight it, but it binds us both." Her voice softened. "And yet, it's your eyes that can't look away." Ronan's hand twitched at his side, torn between fury and something far more dangerous. He turned sharply. "You don't know what you've done." "Oh, I do," she whispered. "I turned your god into a curse." That night, the fortress didn't sleep. The storm outside raged like the gods themselves were at war. Ronan returned to her cell long after midnight. He told himself it was to ensure she hadn't escaped, but his pulse betrayed him. She was awake, sitting by the bars, moonlight spilling over her face. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale, but her eyes, those eyes still blazed with life. He stood in the doorway, silent. She tilted her head. "Can't sleep, Alpha?" His lips twitched into a faint smile. "You sound disappointed." "I'm not," she said softly. "I just wonder how it feels, being haunted by someone you tried to break." He stepped inside, the air between them tightening. "You think I'm haunted?" "I know you are." He moved closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell the smoke on his breath. The chain between them glowed faintly where it brushed against his hand. "Do you know what you did to me that night?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I set you free." Ronan's hand shot out, grabbing the chain, pulling her closer. "You call this freedom?" Their faces were inches apart now, their breaths mingling, hearts pounding like drums in the dark. Naya met his gaze, unwavering. "It's the only kind that's real." Something broke in him. All the fury, the grief, the divine rage, it twisted into something else entirely. His hand brushed against her cheek before he could stop himself. Her breath caught, but she didn't flinch. "Why do you fight me?" he whispered. "Because you stopped fighting for yourself," she said. His jaw clenched. "You think this is about choice? About rebellion?" "It's about love," she replied quietly. "And what it becomes when you turn it into a weapon." For a heartbeat, the Alpha King looked less like a ruler and more like a man, lost, torn, burning from within. Then he released her, stepping back as if her touch had scorched him. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed," he said, voice trembling. "The goddess demands obedience, not just from my pack, but from me. Every sin I commit in her name is a chain around my soul." Naya looked up, eyes wet with unshed tears. "Then why serve her at all?" He stared at her, and for the first time, she saw the truth flicker across his face. "Because she holds your life in her hand," he whispered. "And if I disobey again, she'll end you." The silence that followed was unbearable. Naya's heart twisted painfully, the truth crashing over her like a tidal wave. He wasn't her captor. He was her cage. Dawn broke cold and gray. The storm had passed, but inside the fortress, another was brewing. The soldiers whispered as they passed her cell, words like witch, curse-bearer, Alpha's doom. Naya ignored them. She sat quietly, fingers tracing the chain around her wrists, feeling the faint heartbeat it carried, his heartbeat. Outside, the horn sounded. A messenger brought news from the border. The goddess's temple was moving against them. The high priest had declared Ronan's defiance a sin. The war wasn't over. It was only beginning. When Ronan entered her cell again, his armor was streaked with blood, his expression hollow. "They're coming," he said. "The goddess's warriors. The moon guard." She met his gaze. "Then run." He laughed, bitter and tired. "I don't run." "Then die," she said softly, standing despite her chains. "But don't drag me back into your war." He stared at her, and for a moment, something inside him broke. "You think you can stay untouched by this?" he whispered. "You are this war, Naya. You're the fire that started it." She stepped forward, eyes blazing. Then let it burn. The air crackled between them, alive with rage and longing, with everything neither could say. He moved before he thought, one hand gripping the chains, pulling her so close their breaths collided. Her pulse thundered. His eyes darkened, molten golden pain. "Hate me all you want," he murmured, his voice rough, trembling with everything he couldn't kill inside him. His forehead pressed against hers, breath hot against her lips. "But your heart still answers mine." In the silence that followed, the chains between them glowed, not silver, but red. The mark of the goddess flared once more, binding them both in light and agony. And from the heavens, a whisper thundered through the storm. "If love defies me again, I will destroy you both." The night was a symphony of screams and steel. Snow fell like ashes, each flake carrying the echo of a dying warrior's breath. The forest beyond the battlefield burned, trees collapsing in showers of ember and sorrow. Naya ran. The chains Ronan had once placed on her wrists now hung broken, their fragments clinking as she moved through the chaos. Her lungs burned, her body trembled, but her heart, that untamed, reckless heart, refused to die. Behind her, the pack held. The Alpha's army had been ambushed. Arrows fell like rain. Wolves in silver armor turned to beasts mid-battle, their roars shaking the earth. The scent of blood and wet fur filled the air. Naya ducked behind a fallen cart, clutching a dagger stolen from her guard. Her eyes scanned the horizon, and froze. Ronan. He stood at the center of the battlefield, his sword dripping with the blood of those who dared defy him. But even an alpha could bleed. A cut along his shoulder glowed faintly under the moonlight, the mark of the goddess burning brighter than ever. He looked like a fallen god, savage, commanding, unstoppable. Until the enemy struck. A rogue wolf lunged from the shadows, twice Ronan's size, claws glinting with silver. The alpha turned too late. The beast slammed into him, teeth sinking into his neck. Without thought, Naya moved. Her body reacted before her mind did, a blur of speed and fury. She dove forward, grabbing a fallen spear, driving it through the rogue's ribs with a scream that tore the night open. The beast howled, staggered, and collapsed at her feet. Ronan fell to one knee, blood spilling from his wound. Their eyes met, his burning with disbelief, hers with defiance. "You," he rasped. "You saved me?" "Don't flatter yourself," Naya said, voice trembling with exhaustion. "I just didn't want someone else claiming your death." But her hand shook as she reached for his wound, pressing against it to stop the bleeding. The contact burned, literally. The moment her skin met his, their shared mark of the goddess flared to life, glowing a furious silver. Ronan hissed. "It's reacting." "Then let go," she snapped. "I can't." Neither could breathe. The chaos around them faded, the clash of steel, the roars, the fire. For a heartbeat, there was only them. Two enemies bound by something crueler than destiny, a love that refused to die even when everything else did. Naya's lips parted to speak, a warning, a curse, anything to break the spell, but Ronan's hand rose, cupping her cheek with a gentleness she wasn't prepared for. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't do this." But he already had. Their lips met. It wasn't a kiss of tenderness, it was ruin and fire, rebellion and surrender. The snow beneath them melted, the mark on their skin seared, the goddess herself seemed to watch in silent fury. The battlefield faded to silence. For the first time since the war began, everything stopped. When they finally pulled apart, their breaths came ragged and desperate. Naya's eyes glistened, not from weakness, but from the unbearable truth clawing at her chest. "I should hate you," she said softly. "Then hate me," Ronan replied, voice breaking. "Just, don't leave me." The words shattered something inside her. She wanted to scream at him, to remind him of the blood on his hands, the villages burned, the lives lost in his name, but the bond between them pulsed, warm and dangerous, and the goddess's wrath stirred in the heavens above. Thunder rumbled. A storm was coming. The moment shattered when a horn blared in the distance. The rogues were retreating, regrouping for another attack. Naya tried to rise, but her knees buckled. Ronan caught her, his hand steady against her waist. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," she lied. Blood seeped through her sleeve. He scowled. "You risked your life for me. Don't mistake mercy for loyalty, Alpha." "Mercy?" His laugh was bitter. "You call saving your enemy mercy?" Her gaze hardened. "I call it humanity, something you've long forgotten." For a heartbeat, his mask cracked. Behind the fierce Alpha, she glimpsed the man, weary, burdened, haunted. The Ronan she once believed could love without chains. The one she thought she'd lost to power and prophecy. He took a step closer. "Why do you always fight me?" "Because every time I look at you," she whispered, "I see the man who made me his prisoner. And every time I look at you," he murmured, voice raw, "I see the woman who made me question everything I was born to be." The words hung between them, heavier than any sword. The sound of marching drew nearer. Ronan's soldiers surrounded them, their armor gleaming, their eyes filled with confusion. They'd seen the kiss. They'd seen their Alpha, the weapon of the goddess, fall to his knees before an Omega. "Alpha," one of his lieutenants said, hesitant. "The men await your command." "What are your orders?" Ronan didn't answer. He looked down at Naya, still trembling in his arms. Then, slowly, he rose, pulling her up with him. "Take her," he said at last, voice steady but hollow. "Put her in the command tent. No harm comes to her." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. "Alpha, she's the traitor." "She's mine," Ronan snapped, eyes blazing. "And anyone who questions that dies." The camp fell silent. Even the flames seemed to dim at the weight of his words. Naya didn't resist as they bound her wrists again. Her gaze never left his. "You think you can protect me from them?" "No," Ronan said softly. "I'm protecting them from you." She frowned, confused, until she saw it. The mark on her wrist, once silver, now burned crimson. The goddess's wrath was no longer a warning. It was a curse. That night, the sky wept fire. Ronan sat alone outside his tent, the taste of her still haunting his lips. The mark on his skin throbbed with every heartbeat, each pulse whispering her name. He should have felt victory. Instead, he felt ruin. He remembered her words, the look in her eyes as she saved him. The way she'd trembled, yet never bowed. And for the first time since the war began, the Alpha who had once feared nothing, feared himself. Because one kiss had undone everything. One act of mercy had turned the weapon of the goddess into a man of doubt. And love was a war he couldn't win. Cliffhanger. The tent flap rustled. His second-in-command entered, eyes wide with alarm. "Alpha," he said, voice trembling. "You need to see this." Ronan rose slowly. "What is it?" The soldier swallowed hard. "The mark, it's spreading. To the men. To the land." Ronan's eyes darkened as the air grew thick with silver light, the scent of blood and prophecy mingling. He turned toward the flames in the distance, where Naya lay in chains, the mark burning across her skin like fire. "You've cursed us both, Naya," he whispered. "And the goddess won't rest until one of us dies." The storm began at dawn. Wind screamed through the valley, ripping banners from their poles and scattering ashes into the snow. The moon, pale even beneath the daylight, hung ghost-like above the clouds, watching. Judging. Ronan stood at the edge of the camp, his cloak thrashing in the storm's fury, the mark on his chest searing like molten steel. Each flash of lightning sent agony through his veins. He could feel her rage, the moon goddess, the one who had crowned him her weapon. Now she punished him like a disobedient child. Behind him, his army trembled. Wolves whimpered, unable to shift. The very air hummed with divine fury. It wasn't just a storm. It was judgment. Alpha, his lieutenant, cried over the roar of thunder. The priests have arrived. Ronan turned, and the world seemed to darken further. The moon's priests, draped in silver and bone, rode through the storm on black horses, their eyes blindfolded with strips of mooncloth. The lead priest dismounted, his voice a hiss that carried above the wind. You have defied her will, Ronan of the Blood Moon Pack. You have tasted what was forbidden. You have kissed the cursed one. Ronan said nothing. The priest raised his staff, the silver orb at its tip pulsing with eerie light. The goddess demands retribution. The Omega you shelter, the blasphemy named Naya, must die before the next moonrise. Her death alone will cleanse your mark. The soldiers shifted uneasily, glancing between their alpha and the holy men. Ronan's hand fell to his sword. And if I refuse? The priest smiled, teeth glinting like frost. Then the goddess will take everything you command, your pack, your blood, your soul. A bolt of lightning struck the ground beside them, blinding white. The soldiers fell to their knees, some whispering prayers, others screaming her name, the moon, the goddess, the divine light. But Ronan did not bow. He looked up at the storm with defiance blazing in his amber eyes. Tell your goddess, he said, voice low and dangerous, that if she wants Naya's life, she'll have to take mine first. Naya's chains clinked softly as Ronan entered her tent. The wind outside howled like a wounded beast, the scent of wet earth and lightning seeping through the canvas. You brought them, she said before he spoke. The priests. His jaw tightened. They came. They'll kill me. He didn't answer. His silence was enough. For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the soft rhythm of rain, the occasional rumble of thunder like a heartbeat of an angry god. Finally, Naya spoke again, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. You could end this, Ronan. Offer them my blood. The war would stop. The goddess would forgive you. He took a step closer, rainwater dripping from his armor. Do you think I care about forgiveness anymore? You should, she said bitterly. You were her chosen one. Her weapon. I was her slave, he hissed. Her puppet. Every command I obeyed cost me a piece of my soul. And now, when I finally feel alive, he stopped himself, swallowing hard. Now she calls me a traitor. Naya's expression softened, but only slightly. Then let me go. End this before she destroys everything. Ronan's gaze dropped to her wrists, bound and bruised. He reached forward, his fingers brushing the iron cuffs. The mark on his chest flared, as if the goddess herself recoiled from his touch. You think I could let you walk to your death? He whispered. Not after everything? Her voice broke. Then what will you do? Fight the goddess? He looked up, and in his eyes, she saw it, the spark of madness, the kind that births rebellion. If I must, he said, then yes. The tent trembled as thunder cracked again. Outside, soldiers shouted. The storm was growing worse, winds tearing through camps, wolves howling in panic. The priest's chants began to echo from the hilltop, a dirge of judgment. Silver fire gathered in the sky, forming the outline of a crescent moon above the camp. The air shimmered with divine power. Ronan turned toward the sound. She's here. The goddess? She's watching. His voice was hollow. Waiting for me to choose. The priests appeared again at the edge of the encampment, their silver staffs raised high. The moon bleeds tonight, the head priest intoned. The blasphemy must be cleansed. Lightning struck the ground between them, forming a circle of fire. The priest stepped forward, and from the flames, spectral wolves emerged, their eyes glowing white, their forms half mist and half bone. The goddess's hounds. The pack fell to their knees in terror. Alpha, one of his soldiers cried. They're divine. We can't fight them. But Ronan drew his sword, a massive black blade etched with the runes of the blood moon line. He raised it high, the stormlight flashing along its edge. Then don't fight for me, he said. Fight for her. The soldiers hesitated only a moment before rising, loyalty overpowering fear. Swords clashed, claws tore through the spectral beasts. The camp erupted into chaos once more. Naya stumbled from her tent, her chains still on. She saw him, the Alpha who once conquered her, now standing alone before gods and monsters alike. Ronan fought like a man possessed. Each swing of his sword cut through lightning, through prophecy, through fate itself. But the mark on his skin pulsed brighter and brighter, silver bleeding into crimson. The goddess's voice thundered across the sky. You were mine, Ronan. You were born to serve the moon. You were forged to destroy her, not love her. Ronan fell to one knee, his sword trembling in his hand. Blood dripped from his mouth, steaming as it hit the snow. She's not yours, he snarled. Not anymore. Lightning struck again, straight into him. The blast threw him back, tearing through his armor, searing his mark until the air filled with the stench of burning flesh. Ronan! Naya screamed, breaking through the line of soldiers. She ran to him, dragging the chain still shackled to her wrists. When she reached him, she fell to her knees, cradling his face in her hands. His eyes fluttered open, amber glowing faintly in the stormlight. You shouldn't have come, he whispered. You shouldn't have fought alone. For a heartbeat, the storm paused. The lightning froze in the clouds. The world seemed to hold its breath. The goddess's voice came again, soft but venomous. Then die together, my children of sin. The ground split. Silver fire erupted around them, a ring of divine flame closing in. Soldiers fled in terror. The priests raised their staffs, chanting faster. Ronan rose, dragging Naya to her feet. Stay behind me. No, she said, voice trembling. If we burn together. He turned to her, a tragic smile ghosting his lips. You were never meant to bow. And you, she said, her voice breaking, were never meant to kneel. They stood, side by side, as the storm reached its peak, gods above, mortals below, fate unraveling at the seams. The moon split the clouds with a final blinding strike. Ronan lifted his sword to the sky, roaring over the storm, over the voice of the goddess, over destiny itself. Then let the moon fall. The lightning answered. The world went white. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The priests were gone. The storm was gone. Even the moon itself had vanished from the sky. In its place hung a single burning sigil, half moon, half flame. And in the ashes below, Naya whispered in disbelief, her voice trembling through the smoke. Ronan, what have you done? Never rose again. Only its shattered reflection hung above the battlefield, jagged shards of silver bleeding through storm clouds, as if the sky itself had broken. The air smelled of iron and ash. And in the heart of that chaos, two figures stood against the world. Ronan, the cursed Alpha who defied the goddess. Naya, the Omega whose rebellion had torn fate apart. Their breaths mingled in the cold. Around them, the armies of wolves roared, the sound echoing through the valley like the heartbeat of war itself. Ready your line. Ronan bellowed, his voice cutting through the storm. His armor was cracked, streaked with blood both divine and mortal. But his eyes, those burning amber eyes, were unwavering. Tonight, we fight not for the moon, but for freedom. The soldiers, rogues, outcasts, and the remnants of fallen packs, howled in reply. Across the field, the moon's alphas marched in gleaming silver armor. Their banners bore the goddess's crescent sigil, glowing faintly even under the dying light. Leading them was Alpha Kale of the Frostfang pack, chosen sword of the moon, a giant of a man with a voice like thunder and eyes like winter. Ronan of Blood Moon. Kale's voice carried across the plain. You have defied the goddess and brought ruin to our kind. Kneel now, and your followers may yet be spared. Ronan raised his blade, its black edge glinting red beneath the fractured light. Tell your goddess she'll have to bury me herself. The horn sounded. And the war began. Steel clashed. Wolves shifted mid-stride, fur erupting through flesh as bodies collided in waves of fury. The earth trembled beneath thousands of feet. The scent of blood thickened the air, heavy and sweet. Naya fought beside the line, her daggers flashing silver with every strike. She was smaller, faster, a shadow weaving through carnage. Every movement was desperation, every breath survival. She wasn't fighting for glory. She fought to keep him alive. Ronan's form was impossible to miss, cutting through soldiers like a storm-given shape. The mark on his chest blazed with crimson light, as if fueled by rage itself. Each time his blade fell, the earth shook. But the goddess's chosen fought with divine precision. Her priests stood upon a nearby ridge, chanting in unison, calling down silver fire that incinerated anything it touched. Screams tore through the wind. A rogue beside Naya fell, his body burning with moonlight before turning to ash. She turned, and saw the priests raising their staffs toward her. Blasphemy, one cried. The cursed Omega defile the sacred ground. Before the light struck, Ronan was there, slamming into her, dragging her down as the blast split the air above them. The ground exploded, throwing dirt and fire into the sky. When the smoke cleared, he was on top of her, shielding her with his body. Blood streaked his cheek. His breathing came ragged, furious. Stay close to me, he growled. Naya's lips parted. You'll die protecting me. His gaze met hers, a storm of fury and something far softer. Then I'll die knowing I didn't lose you. The world roared around them, chaos and screams, fire and steel, but in that heartbeat, everything fell silent. The moonlight fractured across his face, painting him in ghostly beauty. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to love him. And she wanted to live long enough to figure out which was stronger. By nightfall, the snow began to fall, soft, slow, almost merciful. But it turned crimson the moment it touched the ground. The Battle of Silver Hollow had become legend before it ended. Packs once united under the moon now tore each other apart. Brothers turned on brothers. Bloodlines burned away like paper in flame. Ronan's army was losing. For every one of his men, 3 of the goddess's alphas stood against them. The priest's chants grew louder, faster, their divine energy spreading across the battlefield. The mark on Naya's wrist began to pulse again, glowing violently. She stumbled, clutching it. The pain was unbearable, like molten fire beneath her skin. Naya. Ronan caught her before she fell. What's happening? Her voice broke. The goddess is calling me. She wants me gone. Ronan's eyes darkened. He looked around, the priest's circle was tightening. They were forming a seal, channeling the moon's fury directly at her. Not while I breathe, he snarled. He rose, dragging her behind him, and charged through the flames. He cut down 2 alphas, tore through the circle, and reached the priests. The divine fire burned his armor, seared his skin, but he didn't stop. The head priest turned toward him, robes flickering with silver light. You would raise your sword against the goddess herself? I already have. With a roar, Ronan drove his blade through the priest's chest. The man screamed, his body exploding into shards of silver light that scattered into the wind. The storm faltered. But it was too late. The remaining priests completed the incantation. A bolt of divine lightning struck Naya. She screamed, not from pain, but from memory. The mark on her wrist burned through the bandages, flaring into brilliance. For a moment, the battlefield went still as everyone turned to watch. The silver flame spiraled up her arm, wrapping her in light. Her eyes glowed, gold, then white. When she rose, the air itself bent around her. She wasn't just a wolf anymore. She was something else, something the moon feared. The soldiers stumbled back in awe. Ronan reached for her, voice hoarse. Naya? Her gaze locked on him, filled with sorrow and power beyond mortal reach. She's trying to use me, she whispered. Through me, she'll burn you all. He shook his head. No. Fight her. Her hands trembled. I can't. You can, he said, stepping closer despite the heat radiating from her. You're not hers. You're mine. That word, mine, cracked through the noise like a heartbeat. The divine light flickered. The mark dimmed. And then, the storm shattered. The blast sent both of them flying. When Ronan rose, his body bleeding and battered, he saw her lying in the snow, alive, but unconscious. He gathered her in his arms, cradling her as the battle raged on. Around them, the snow fell heavier, muffling the cries, dimming the flames. He looked down at her, at the woman who had ruined him, saved him, and cursed him all in one. I'll end this, he murmured. I swear it. But in the distance, a new sound rose, slow, deep, commanding. A voice. Echoing across the field like a sermon carried by the wind. Lay down your swords, it said. For the goddess has spoken. The fighting stopped. Even the wounded turned toward the sound. Upon a ridge of blackened stone stood the surviving high priest, his robes torn, his face pale as death. He raised his staff, its silver orb burning with holy fire. The curse will not end with war, he declared. It will not end with defiance. There is only one way to cleanse the sin that binds heaven and earth. Ronan tensed, still holding Naya close. Don't. The priest's gaze fixed on him, and then on the unconscious Omega in his arms. To end the curse, he intoned, voice cold and merciless, the Omega must die. The sky turned blood red. The broken moon flared once more, its light focusing on Naya's still form. Ronan's roar shook the heavens, a sound of fury, grief, and love that defied gods. But the mark on her skin began to glow again. And this time it didn't burn alone. The world had gone quiet after the storm of war. Smoke still curled from the distant battlefield, the scent of iron and ash carried on the cold night wind. The moon hung low, veiled in clouds, as though the goddess herself watched in silence, judging the two who dared love beneath her sacred light. Ronan leaned heavily against the shattered arch of a ruined temple, his armor dented and streaked with blood, not all of it his. The Alpha who once commanded armies now breathed like a hunted wolf. His golden eyes flickered in the firelight, no longer burning with fury, but something softer, something dangerously human. Naya sat across from him, her cloak torn, her silver hair tangled with soot and moonlight. The last few days had been nothing but blood and running from soldiers, from destiny, from the goddess herself. Yet here, surrounded by silence and ruin, her heart finally beat without fear. For a moment, they weren't Alpha and Omega. They were just two souls clinging to the same fading hope. You should rest, she whispered, her voice low, fragile. Ronan's jaw tightened. Rest is for the dead. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Then maybe you should learn to be human for a night. He looked up sharply at that, and for once, the coldness in his gaze cracked. Human, he echoed, as though testing the word. Do you know what that means, little Omega? It means weakness. Hunger. Loss. And love, Naya said softly. Don't forget that part. Ronan's throat worked as if the word burned him. Love. He had seen men die for it. He had killed because of it. But to feel it, to truly feel it, was something he had long buried beneath duty and vengeance. The fire crackled between them, small embers drifting upward like dying stars. He tore a piece of cloth from his tunic, wrapping the bleeding cut on his arm. Naya reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing his wrist. The contact stilled him. "Let me," she murmured. Her hands were steady, gentle as moonlight. She cleaned the wound, tied the bandage, and only then looked up to meet his eyes. In them, she saw the man behind the alpha, weary, haunted, but still burning with a strength that drew her closer. "Why do you fight for me, Ronan?" she asked, voice trembling. "You could have ended this if you'd given me up." He didn't answer immediately. His gaze wandered to the fire, then to the distant horizon where smoke met stars. "I fight because they told me to kill you," he finally said. And every time they said it, something inside me screamed no. I thought it was defiance. Now I know, it was you. Naya swallowed hard, emotion tightening her chest. "I never wanted to be your curse." He leaned forward, the space between them shrinking like the calm before a storm. "You were never my curse, Naya. You were my choice." The night deepened, and the fire dimmed to embers. Outside, wolves howled, mournful cries that echoed through the valley, reminders of what they had both lost. Naya rested her head against the cool stone, her heart torn between peace and sorrow. "Do you think we'll ever see it, a world where alphas and omegas aren't bound by the goddess's chains?" Ronan exhaled slowly. "If such a world exists, it will be built on our blood." A silence stretched between them, heavy with truth. She turned to him, her eyes soft and glimmering. "Then promise me something." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of promise?" "If death comes for us, if fate wins, promise you'll find me again. Maybe not in this life, but the next." Ronan looked at her for a long time, too long, and something unspoken passed between them. The battlefield, the pain, the rebellion, all of it faded in that one quiet heartbeat. He reached out, fingers brushing a loose strand of her hair from her face. "Under the same moon," he murmured. "No matter where we are." Her breath hitched. "Under the same moon," she repeated. And then, for the first time since the world began to burn, they smiled. Not in victory, not in peace, but in understanding. He leaned in, forehead pressing against hers. The scent of blood and smoke mixed with the warmth of her skin. The moonlight haloed them in silver fire, and for a moment, it felt as though time itself paused to witness their vow. But peace was a luxury they were never meant to have. A whisper of movement cut through the silence, the snap of a bowstring, faint but sharp. Ronan's instincts screamed. He moved before thought, before breath, before fear. "Naya." She turned just as he lunged, shoving her aside. The arrow tore through the air, and buried itself deep into his shoulder. The impact threw him back against the stone wall. His breath left him in a strangled gasp. Naya's scream shattered the night. "Ronan!" She caught him before he fell, her hands slick with his blood. The firelight painted his wound crimson, a brutal stain against pale skin. He gritted his teeth, one hand clutching her arm. "Stay down," he rasped, scanning the shadows. Figures moved in the distance, silhouettes of soldiers with the mark of the moon goddess glowing faintly on their armor. Her priests had found them. The peace they had stolen had ended. Naya pressed her hand to the wound, tears blurring her vision. "No. No, you can't. Don't cry," he murmured, his voice raw yet steady. "You wanted me to be human. This is what it feels like." "Stop talking," she whispered, desperate. "You'll bleed out." He smiled faintly, pain twisting his lips. "If this is how it ends, at least I got to keep my promise." The soldiers advanced, their blades catching the moonlight. She could hear their chants, cold, merciless. The Omega must die. Naya's body trembled. Rage. Fear. Love. It all boiled together until something ancient and wild stirred within her. The mark on her neck, the one the goddess herself had burned, began to glow. Ronan's eyes widened. Naya, what are you doing? She rose slowly, her hands drenched in his blood, her gaze fixed on the approaching priests. The air thickened with power. Her voice, when it came, was not her own. You will not take him, she whispered. Not while I still breathe. The moon shuddered behind the clouds, its light dimming as though recoiling from her defiance. A wind rose, swirling through the ruins. The ground cracked beneath her feet. The flames flared higher, drawn by unseen force. Ronan struggled to stand, but she turned to him, eyes glowing with eerie silver light. You promised me forever, she said. Then live for it. He tried to reach her, but it was too late. Naya lifted her hand, and the world erupted. Light exploded outward, searing and divine. The soldiers screamed as the power of the moon itself answered her rage, not to bless, but to destroy. The ruins shook. The fire turned white. When the blinding light faded, silence returned. Bodies lay scattered, the air heavy with smoke and divine scent. Naya fell to her knees beside Ronan, shaking, the glow in her eyes fading. He caught her face in his hands, bloodied and trembling. You shouldn't have done that. Her lips trembled. You would have died. He leaned closer, forehead against hers, breath ragged. You might have just damned us both. Her tears fell onto his skin, mingling with blood. Then we'll face damnation together. Ronan's voice was barely a whisper now. You don't understand, Naya. She looked at him, terrified. What do you mean? He met her gaze, and in his eyes, she saw the reflection of the moon, split in two. The goddess, he breathed. She's coming. An unearthly howl ripped through the night, ancient, divine, and full of wrath. The clouds parted, bathing them in silver fire. The voice of the goddess thundered across the ruins. You defied me once, my children. Now, you will pay the price. The moon bled silver tears. The ruins trembled beneath the fury of the heavens as Ronan collapsed against the broken stones, his breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. Blood, dark and glistening, seeped through his fingers, pooling beneath him like the shadow of death itself. Naya knelt beside him, her trembling hands pressing against the wound that refused to close. Her tears mixed with his blood, the scent of iron and sorrow thick in the air. Ronan, she whispered, shaking. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. His lips curved faintly, the ghost of a smile fighting through the pain. Still, giving orders, little Omega? She tried to smile, but it broke halfway. You don't get to joke right now. He coughed, blood staining his lips. Then what do I get? Her voice cracked. You get to live. Lightning tore through the sky as if in answer, divine rage screaming across the heavens. The moon's army emerged from the smoke and dust, their armor glowing with sacred light. Priests and alphas, the chosen of the goddess, surrounded the ruins in a tightening circle. Their leader stepped forward, robes trailing silver flame. His voice rang out, harsh and holy. Ronan, Alpha of Defiance, your rebellion ends tonight. The goddess demands your life as payment for your sin. Ronan raised his head weakly, his amber eyes still burning with that fierce, unyielding pride. Then she'll have to take it from me herself. The priest's eyes narrowed. She already has. The soldiers raised their spears. The air vibrated with divine power, and yet, before they could strike, the ground beneath them began to hum. Naya's hands trembled as she pressed them against Ronan's wound. Her lips moved soundlessly, whispering words older than time. The power within her, the forbidden blood of the first Omegas, stirred, waking like a sleeping god. Ronan's eyes widened in fear. Naya, no. Don't do this. She looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I won't let you die. Not for me. You don't understand what you're invoking, he rasped. That power, it's mine, she whispered. And then the world broke. A surge of energy ripped through the ruins, wild, unrestrained, ancient. The soldiers staggered back as the earth split open, spilling molten light. The air turned thick with the scent of magic and blood. Naya rose slowly, her body trembling as the forbidden power coursed through her veins. The moonlight bent around her, drawn to her like a tide. Her hair whipped in the wind, her eyes blazing with a light not of this world. The priests cried out, some falling to their knees. Blasphemy! She calls upon the blood of the first. Ronan tried to reach her, his hand lifting weakly. Naya, stop. You can't. She turned to him, her voice echoing with something that wasn't human. You gave everything to protect me. Now let me protect you. The mark of the moon on her neck burned white-hot. The earth beneath her feet pulsed with power, cracks glowing like rivers of molten silver. From those fissures rose shapes, ethereal wolves made of light and flame, howling to the broken sky. The army recoiled. Each spectral wolf turned its gaze upon the priests. One by one, they lunged, tearing through divine shields, scattering the goddesses chosen like dry leaves in the wind. Ronan watched, horror and awe colliding in his chest. He had seen Naya's strength before, but this was something else. Something sacred. Something damned. He tried to rise, but pain seared through him, forcing him back to the ground. You'll kill yourself, he gasped. Naya's voice broke as she looked back at him. Then let me die for something worth dying for. A blinding light filled the sky. The fractured moon pulsed, once, twice, before a voice like thunder tore through the air. Naya of the bloodline forsaken. Every sound stopped. Even the wind held its breath. The voice of the goddess rolled across the battlefield, vast and merciless. You have broken the covenant. You have spilled divine blood and defied the order of the moon. You will pay the price. The ground split wider, revealing a chasm of swirling light beneath the ruins. The spectral wolves howled once more before dissolving into mist. The power around Naya began to waver, unstable. She fell to her knees, panting, clutching her chest as the light inside her flickered like a dying flame. Please, she whispered, looking up at the heavens. Don't take him. Take me instead. The sky ignited with silver fire. No, Ronan croaked, dragging himself toward her. Don't. But the goddess's laughter echoed like the sound of breaking glass. You would offer your soul for a traitor? You would stand against me, child of dust? Naya bowed her head, tears falling freely. Yes. Her voice shook, but her heart did not. Because he taught me what your light never could, mercy. The fire in the sky turned to storm. Winds howled, tearing at the ruins. The priests fled, shouting prayers lost in the chaos. The moon flared brighter and brighter until it was all that existed, light and sound and fury. Ronan reached her, catching her face in his blood-stained hands. You don't have to do this, he pleaded. She smiled through her tears. You once told me the world was built on our blood. Maybe this time, it can be reborn from it. He shook his head desperately. I can't lose you. Her fingers brushed his cheek. You won't. Not really. The goddess's voice thundered one final time. Then the bargain is struck. The light burst downward, slamming into Naya's chest. She screamed as the power tore through her, the mark on her neck blazing so bright it seared the air. Ronan held her, refusing to let go even as his skin burned from the radiance. Naya, he shouted, voice raw with agony. Look at me. Stay with me. She did. Her eyes, silver and endless, met his. "Remember the promise," she breathed. "Under the same moon." And then, silence. The light vanished. The air stilled. The battlefield lay in ruin. Ronan blinked, his arms empty. The mark on his chest still glowed faintly, but she was gone. No body. No breath. Only a single silver feather lying in the ashes where she had stood. He stared at it for a long, endless moment. Then, slowly, he lifted his head toward the sky. The moon above shimmered, now whole again, no longer fractured. Her price had been accepted. His heart shattered. A sound rose from deep within him, not a cry, not a word, but a howl. Low. Broken. Eternal. The howl of an alpha who had lost everything. It echoed through the ruins, across the forests, over the mountains. Every wolf, loyal or rebel, stopped to listen. The world seemed to bow to that sound, mourning the love that defied even gods. As the echo faded, the wind whispered through the stones, her voice, faint and tender. Under the same moon. Ronan fell to his knees, clutching the silver feather to his chest. His body trembled, his heart splitting open with grief. Above him, the sky wept silver rain, and for the first time in centuries, the goddess did not speak. Only the silence remained. As dawn began to break, a shadow moved through the mist, tall, cloaked, carrying a staff crowned with moonstone. The voice that spoke was soft, familiar. "Ronan," it whispered. "She's not gone. But the price isn't over." The world was quiet when Ronan opened his eyes. The battlefield was gone, no smoke, no screams, no blood. Only silence, and the faint hum of divine light seeping from cracks in the earth. He lay upon cold stone, his body whole again, his chest rising with breath that did not belong to the living. A figure loomed over him, cloaked in silver flame, her face shrouded by light. The moon goddess. "Rise," she commanded, her voice like thunder cloaked in velvet. He obeyed without thought. His limbs moved like a puppet's, fluid, powerful, unfeeling. "You were once my chosen," she said. "And you defied me for love." Ronan said nothing. The words meant nothing to him. Her fingers brushed his face, cold, divine, cruel. "So I will return to you your strength, but not your mercy. You will serve once more as my blade, the bringer of balance, the destroyer of rebellion." She leaned close, her voice dripping like honey into poison. "The Omega who defied me lives. She walks the cursed earth, cloaked in mortal blood. You will find her. You will unmake her." Ronan's eyes, once amber, now pale as the moon, flickered with divine light. "As you command." The goddess smiled, satisfied. The wind rose, swirling around him in a storm of silver mist. When it cleared, the battlefield had changed, or perhaps time had. The ruins were silent, the fires long gone. He stood alone, blade in hand, the world still trembling beneath the echo of his resurrection. The goddess's whisper lingered in his mind. "Kill her, and your soul will be cleansed." Far away, in the shadow of a ruined temple, Naya awoke with a gasp. The air was thick with the scent of ash and rain. She touched her chest, her heartbeat faint but steady. The last thing she remembered was the light, the pain, the sound of his voice calling her name before everything went black. And then, nothing. Now she was here. Alive. Alone. Her fingers brushed something cold in her palm, a single feather, silver as starlight. His. Tears welled in her eyes. "Ronan." But before she could whisper another word, the wind changed. The scent of something ancient and familiar filled the air, the scent of him. Her pulse stuttered. She turned. He stood at the edge of the ruins, cloaked in mist, his blade gleaming like captured moonlight. For one impossible heartbeat, she thought it was a dream. That somehow, by some mercy, the goddess had returned him to her. Then he looked at her. And she knew. Those eyes, once molten gold, filled with warmth, pride, and fury, were now pale, empty, cold. The eyes of a god's weapon. Her breath caught in her throat. "Ronan?" He said nothing. His hand tightened around his sword. "You're alive," she whispered, tears spilling freely. "You came back." "By the will of the moon," he interrupted, voice devoid of emotion. "And by her will, you die." Her world shattered. "No," she said softly, shaking her head. "You don't mean that." "It's me, Ronan. It's—" "You are the blasphemy," he said, stepping closer. "The one who defied the covenant. The one who broke the sky." His blade gleamed, reflecting the broken moon above. Naya stumbled back, her voice trembling. "You died for me." He paused for a moment, a flicker, a hesitation. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "I remember death," he said, "but not you." Her knees weakened. "Then remember this." The mark on her wrist flared, faint, broken, but still alive. The bond. The light reached for him like a forgotten memory. His breath hitched, his body faltering. For an instant, his eyes shifted, from cold silver to the faintest trace of amber. Naya stepped closer, her hand trembling. "Ronan, it's me. You swore we'd meet under the same moon." The wind howled. The goddess's whisper slithered through his mind. "Kill her, or lose yourself again." He roared in agony, clutching his head as the mark on his chest burned like fire. Naya reached for him, voice breaking. "Fight it. Please." "I can't," he shouted, staggering back. "She owns me now." "Then let her take me too," she said, stepping forward. "If this is what the goddess wants, she'll have to face both of us." He looked at her then, truly looked. And something deep within him trembled. For the first time since his resurrection, he felt pain, love, memory. He saw flashes, her smile in the forest, her laughter beneath the ruins, her blood-streaked face as she whispered, "Take me instead." His grip faltered. His blade wavered. The goddess's voice thundered through the heavens, furious. Weakness. Lightning crashed around them, striking the ground, splitting trees, burning the air. The moon above turned red. Ronan fell to one knee, gasping, torn between two masters, love and faith. Naya knelt before him, pressing her forehead to his. "You are not her weapon," she whispered. "You never were. You were mine." Her words struck deeper than any blade. He closed his eyes, trembling. "Naya." Her hands cradled his face, her tears falling onto his skin. "If she demands blood, let it be mine. I would rather die by your hand, than live in a world without you." "No," he rasped, shaking his head. "Don't say that." "Then remember me," she said softly. "Not as your sin, but as your heart." The moon cracked. The world screamed. Ronan's blade ignited with divine flame. He rose to his feet, his body shaking violently as the goddess forced his hand. "Do it," her voice thundered through him. "Prove your loyalty." He turned the blade toward Naya, his face a storm of pain and fury. His breath came ragged, his pulse racing. Every fiber of his being screamed no, but the goddess's chains dug deep into his soul. Naya stood tall, tears glistening like diamonds on her cheeks. "You wanted freedom," she whispered. "Now take it." The sword trembled in his grasp. Her voice softened to a whisper. "Then kill your mate, Alpha." The world fell silent. Ronan's eyes widened, the final remnants of his soul flickering through the cracks of divine control. Memories flooded him, her laughter, her defiance, her kiss beneath the broken moon. The mark on his chest blazed, brighter, wilder, freer, and then shattered. He screamed, falling to his knees as the blade plunged into the ground beside her, inches from her heart. The divine energy recoiled, surging back into the heavens in a torrent of light. The goddess's voice broke into fury and grief. You have chosen death over destiny. Ronan lifted his gaze to the sky, his voice hoarse but resolute. No, he said. I've chosen love. The heavens split open. Silver fire poured down like rain, consuming everything in light and sound. Naya reached for him, but the force was too strong. Their fingers brushed, once, twice, before the storm swallowed them whole. And then, as the moon's light faded to black, her voice was the last sound left in the dying world. Under the same moon. As the light devoured the world, one last whisper echoed through the void, Naya's voice, soft, defiant, eternal. Then kill your mate, Alpha. The moon went dark. The world fell silent. And love became legend.